Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Influencers Project. I'm your host, Craig Reynolds, and today I've got with me Mr. Matt Hawkins. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show. I think what you've been working on over the last few years has been really inspiring. You know, I get to interview a lot of entrepreneurs on my show, and seeing what you're doing and how fast it's taken off has given me some hope for what I'm doing here, and hopefully it'll pick up steam and continue to go. But how did you get into what you're doing now at Ridge Supply?
Well, I guess it was an accident. And realistically, the quick story is I was managing a building supply and I had to take my son to the dentist in the middle of the week, and so he had an appointment at like 2:00. So I left before lunch and drove back to my house and decided to try to get a short lunch ride in. And I went for a lunch ride, and I basically got run over by a pickup truck while I was riding my bike. And I was super lucky to have survived, had a broken pelvis, and was in the trauma center for a while. And I realized that day, even though it was the middle of the day and like at noon on a straight road, I was wearing all black. And because black is cool and everybody makes black clothing, and I had a black bike and black shoes, black kit and black socks. And I knew that if I was going to heal up and get back on the bike, that I needed to be maybe more visible, that it's possible that the person didn't see me or I wasn't visible enough. And so, yeah, that's what started the passion of like looking into maybe doing something that would help visibility. And in doing that, I took a trip out to Hickory to Defeat because when I was in the hospital, my wife had brought me some neon Defeat socks, and I kind of became this poster child for high visibility for Defeat. Just because of the incident. And I went out there and visited with Shane Cooper, who's the owner, and he gave me a tour of the factory, and we rode bikes together. And this was after I'd healed up and stuff. And I couldn't help but think that maybe I could make my own sock. I certainly wasn't going to be a sock company, but I thought, well, I could make my own sock and maybe just sell it to some buddies or get a list together of enough people that maybe would buy a sock every month. I had no clue what I was doing.
Right.
but I basically had no intention of starting a business or of doing it, but I wanted to turn the negative of everything into a positive. And I had gotten an insurance check. It was for $827. And that was the price of all of the things that were damaged or lost. You know, like my helmet was cracked, and when they add all that retail stuff up, your shoes, your phone, all these things, it was $827. And I took that exact money and I designed a sock that looked like the Blue Ridge Mountains. And the rest is kind of history. So I invested that money into that first round of socks, and ever since then, I've been in business for over 5 years. I have, that's the only money I've ever invested in the business. I've just flipped it since then. And so it's, in one way, it's been a good business model to, like, you never outreach what you can do because you have to sell it first to buy new stuff. And that's worked for me, but it's kind of a cool story because the seed money for the business idea was from that accident. And there's a lot more to unpack about the accident, but that's how the business started. So, and it was September 15th, 2015. So,
wow.
Or no, yes. September 15th, 2014. It's been 6 years ago.
Really?
Coming up here soon. Yeah.
So your influence was an injury brought on by an accident from getting hit by a vehicle. And I think as cyclists, that is one of our biggest fears is not being seen when we're on the road. I spoke with an officer about why cars hit cyclists. And his story to me was, for example, you come to a stop sign or stops, you're in your car and you look left, you look right, and you're looking for cars.
Yeah.
He said this goes for motorcycles as well. So in your mind, you're thinking, I don't see a car either way, I'm going to go. But your mind doesn't see the cyclist or the motorcycle because you don't see a car.
Right.
And I thought, that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
What you're doing and making more higher visibility clothing, it's almost impossible to not see the firefly coming at you. How's the response been? What's that been like for you? I mean, obviously it's been great. You've been in business for 6 years, but I mean, the head has picked up pretty quick.
I will say that initially I just did my research on what that phenomenon is you're talking about. And it's called biomotion. So like everybody drives, and when you drive, you're kind of relaxed. It's something you become initially when you first start to drive, you're nervous, but eventually driving is second nature. And the amount of
autopilot, right?
Yeah. The amount of decisions you're making, the amount of things that you're processing, it's actually insane, but you get to a point where you travel at a certain speed, you know what I mean? Your depth perception, the way things come up, when you're going to yield, when you see a stop sign, all these things are like things that your brain is processing, and it's overload. The thing about humans is that they recognize other humans, and that's what's called biomotion. So the movement of another human is something you would recognize. The problem with a car is if you're looking 500 yards down the road, the other human that you're seeing is like the size of like a tiny ant, visually, and it could look like anything else. Now, granted, if you're hyper aware and you're somebody who is really paying attention, you're going to always see a cyclist. I mean, I don't feel like I've ever not seen one, but I do think that people can be distracted, not just with, there's distraction from phones and all that kind of stuff. That's a whole nother thing, but really you notice things and you recognize them as road signs or as trees or as much like a deer might run out and you don't see it. Well, you don't see it because you're not looking for it.
Right.
But if a deer was bright orange and was running with traffic, you might see it a lot closer. So anyway, what I found out was that blocked color at a distance was more visible than solid color. So
got it.
So the big thing about my design initially was about, in cycling at the time in 2015, you had two colors. You had black, and then you had bright yellow or bright orange. And the people that wear bright yellow or bright orange to try to be safe, it's not that they were doing anything wrong. It's just that they probably looked a lot like a road sign at a long distance.
Right.
The one part of your body that's always moving when you're riding is your feet. So to put blocked color on your feet, it's like a blinking light, and that's the thing that's moving all the time. Now, is there any real science behind all that? Who knows? But that was my concept. My concept was blocked color on the feet and try to do something that popped with color. If you just wear a neon pink sock, it is very bright. But if you do a blue and a white and a pink, that tends to catch the eye. So
do you think it's because of the contrast of the colors that it throws it off? It's like, wait, what is that?
Yes. And it's the eye's recognition of that isn't just a color, that is something else. And therefore it's more visible. I do think it like I said, I don't have any, it's not like I've done any studies. I've seen studies about this, but I haven't done any. Sure. I will say that the other thing that the Ridge Supply, and back to your original question, how has it grown? How has it spread? I don't do, one of my dirty secrets is I don't advertise. So I don't actually pay, money to force Ridge Supply in front of people. It grows and spreads kind of organically. And one of the reasons that is it's a mountain range sock that maybe inspires people that everybody loves to ride in the mountains, or they wish they do. Most of us live at the coast. In general, the population is centered around the coast. So we all want to go to the mountains. So there's that. But the thing about a Ridge Supply sock is that from a distance, without a logo or without text, you know what it is.
Right.
That also speaks to the visibility part of it. So I've become obsessed with looking at cycling pictures and looking at people's socks. I don't look at anything else. They could have the nicest bikes, but I just look at the socks because that's what I do. Yeah. And I think that Ridge Supply socks are unique in that the design element of that blocked color it does stand out. And so I think that's what's actually helped spread it, because I like to say it functionally works. Mm-hmm. And there's a fashion element there. It may go out of style as far as whatever the fashion element is, but the functionality of the sock, the technical, they just make the best sock. And so I didn't mess with that. Technology's there. And then I put the blocked color on it and made it pop. And there's a story on how it actually jumped off and the way this all changed very early days that, and I'll try not to be too long winded, but essentially.
No, I love this. This is your story, man. I love this. This is great.
I made this sock that you can see back here. Here, I've got one right here. Maybe it was like this, except for it has a white top on it. It's right back there.
Okay.
And so I made that sock, and the sock was the Blue Ridge Mountains. And, real simply, 4 colors of blue and then white on the top. Well, I sold 144 pair of them in like 2 weeks, and I designed 2 different new colors. And basically I just took it to where it had a blue color on the tops, like a light blue. And then one that was like reds through yellows. At the time, I wasn't just going to do mountain socks. I mean, I did not know what I was doing. And I designed some other styles and stuff, but I love the contour lines that I had put on there because everybody was doing straight lines and sort of geometric shapes. So I just okay, I'm going to do contour lines and try to have 5 colors. Well, there's this team down in Austin, Texas, called Team Yacht Club, and they had designed this jersey, or maybe it was a skin suit. I think they designed a skin suit, and it just so happened to look very similar to my sock design, like gradients of blues. And then they had a neon orange sleeves. So it was like the same thing that my socks were, but if my socks had a neon orange top, it would have matched perfectly. Well, because of Instagram, I was just getting on Instagram and starting that. And the business had only been, it's like a couple months old. They, people linked us together like, hey, wow, you need a Ridge Supply sock. And at the time, it was kind of ironic because, I knew that they were interested, and I reached out and I talked to a guy that was the representative there. And I was like, hey, I'll make this sock. How many do you think you can buy? And they got it, got there together, and they thought they could buy 32. Well, I thought, 32, and I have to buy 72 pair. Back then, that was a big risk. That was a huge risk. Like, I got to sell 40 of these things by myself, and I took the gamble. And I did it. Well, after that, and that worked, that sock was hugely popular. I made a pink top one, the same exact designs. So then now I've got like 4 colors. I've got white, I've got orange, I've got blue, and I've got pink. And then I realized I felt like I was like that wolf who's like, okay, this is my tree, and I'm going to pee all around this tree, and everybody's going to know that if you see blue mountains with the color on top, it's Ridge Supply. So no joke, I went and made yellow, purple, green, red, and I ended up having every basic color, and with the blue, 4 colors on the blue on the bottom. And what that did was then everybody every team that was interested in a Ridge Supply sock could match something, some color they had in their kit with my thing.
Right.
Nobody was doing this at the time. Colorways weren't even a thing back then. You may have one or two colorways, but it wasn't like one design and then you had colorways. So what's crazy is that risk of selling that sock to Team Yacht Club actually changed the whole trajectory of the brand and of the way that the business model worked. And it was actually, when you think back now, it seems like, I was a genius, at the time it was like, I was like risking my life to do that, and
you were rolling some dice and it came up.
Huge risk.
Yeah.
And now it's funny because, there's not a day that goes by that somebody doesn't reach out to me from a team that's like, hey, can you do this?
Wow.
Because they want to match stuff. And the other piece that I've learned over the years of doing it is that the cycling industry in general, and it's not like, I don't want to say it's like bad, but what we do as teams and as managers of teams and design elements is like you try to make the person look like head to toe matchy and exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the ethos of Ridge Supply and the blocked color and all that stuff is like that doesn't work. If you just wear black and white and you just wear black and white, it doesn't stand out. And you don't need to be obnoxious with your color, but if you have a black and white kit and a black and white bike and a black helmet and everything's cool, but you have a sock that's black and white and has a hot pink on the top of it, game changer. You don't actually need anything else to say that you're visible, because that thing alone is going to stand out so much. And so that's been something I've tried to encourage customers to do when they're trying to do a direct match of something, or they want to put their logo on a sock or their name. And I'm always like, well, when was the last time you saw a logo on a sock that wasn't a Nike swoosh and you knew what it was? It's just not something, but everybody does it. Every pro team's got their name and their logo on there. And at a distance, it's just a white sock with some gobbledygook on there. So I try to change the dynamic there to give people a color option that matched, but also said Ridge Supply without saying it, and then had a pop of color. So that's been the magic sauce that kind of came out of that one first risk.
I've been working in the retail fashion world for a while, and that pop of color, just to tie things together, has always been a very big selling point when we're working with our guests in the store. Yeah. So you're exactly right. Just that little pop of color, that little thing looks really sharp and really nice. Now, have you branched out into making full kits as well outside of just the socks?
Yeah, for sure. I've made kits since the very beginning with Cutaway, who's a friend of mine out of Central Virginia, and he, every other product that I've made with Ridge Supply, and even the socks to a certain degree, in theory, they're kind of like a collaboration with Defeat. It's a Defeat product that they did, but I put my stuff on it.
Yes.
I've done the same thing with kit, with water bottles, with hats, with, bags, anything. I mean, a lot of brands want to do private label everything. I've preferred to let the people that are really good technically doing the thing they're good at, if they're willing to partner with me. I do have a really clean brand aesthetic that we can put on pretty much anything. And so that's what I've done. So I've made my kit with Cutaway since day one, and we've made a lot of product, and it's been good. I mean, I don't want to say a lot, like, I'm not sold thousands and thousands of kit. It's just that we've made a lot of generations of it,
right.
And what's been nice is we've improved the product. We've taken customer feedback, and we've made sort of seasonality, limited edition kind of things. And that's what I've been kind of proud of too, is like, the vest or the bib. I mean, there's probably been 10 iterations of them over the 5 years. And we just keep, dialing it in. Somebody says, well, the seam isn't this. And, and we've been able to work it out. And that's been kind of cool to have that kind of thing. And then design wise, he's been a huge help for me because I can technically do like Illustrator work and things, some of it, but that's not my perfect skill set. But up here, I have this like perfect vision, of like exactly what it should be like. And then, it would take me days to like actually make it computer perfect. And Philip at Cutaway, he's just like, boom, like, 5 minutes, he's got it. And so
it's like when you go get a tattoo. Here's my idea. Can you put it on paper and see what it looks like? And they're like, here, voila.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I have, and I know talent when I see it, you know what I mean? And he is like, he's got that in spades. He's a wizard at bringing things to life. And so we've been partners, good friends and partners in design for a long time. We've also, as we've grown and his business has grown and my business has grown, we just really tried hard not to, some people think we're the same company in a way, but, we just do, he does his thing. I do mine. He's more custom kit. I do, custom socks. And when we cross over, we just call it Ridge Supply X Cutaway, and that way there's no confusion about where you could get it or whatnot. And it's worked out. It's worked out really good. So yes, I do make kit.
Nice. And where did you get the name Ridge Supply? How did that come about?
It's kind of a cool story. I mean,
this whole thing's a cool story, man. Yeah,
I appreciate that. Yeah. So I'm from Central Virginia. Okay. My whole family's been there for 300 years or something, and they never left. They've been in this one little town. And my wife is from the next town over. So we grew up together, but we never dated or anything like that. And we ran into each other at a wedding when we were like 30. And so we started dating, and she lived here at the beach in North Carolina. And so I took a chance, left Central Virginia, moved here, and we've been here now for almost 15 years. So part of my desire to I live at the beach, and that's great. And a lot of people like want to live at the beach, and I'm not saying I don't, but I am a mountain guy. You know what I mean? Like my home, where I feel the most at home, is in the Blue Ridge Mountains. But where I'm from, we're from outside of Charlottesville, and there's two areas, Charlottesville and then down near Asheville. Everything is called Blue Ridge, Blue Ridge, Blue Ridge. And it's the most trite thing ever. But in my son, our first was born in 2010. We named him Ridge. And so my son is actually named Ridge. And when I went to name this sock thing that I was going to design, there was a couple other, you always look at the competition and what else is out there. There was a couple other brands that had like bike specific names. And I always knew my two big, benchmarks were Patagonia and, at the time, also Mountain Khakis, who I actually work with now. But they both took single products and expanded them out into the new things. Patagonia was, actually started with Black Diamond, or making mountain ironworks for their mountaineering, and then they kept going, and they made some shorts, and they boom, 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 boom. Well, Mountain Khakis, same thing. When I first started seeing Mountain Khakis, it was just khakis. They just had one pair of khakis. So, well, it's grown. I knew Ridge Supply was going to do socks, but I thought in some way I didn't want the name to hold it back from potentially, if I was going to do yoga pants someday, it wasn't called like bikesocks.com, So, so part of giving the name some breadth, some range, was that. And Ridge Supply is what I came up with. And what's funny is, like, in the modern days, you can't name your brand. It doesn't make sense if you can't get the website. It's a waste of time.
You got to Google the websites first and see if it's available. Absolutely.
And for some reason, ridgesupply.com was taken, but not being used. So somebody had bought it because there is a building supply. So now let's back up. I was a building supply guy and had been almost my whole career. My family's been in it for years. There was a building supply I think in New York or in New Jersey called Ridge Supply. There's Blue Ridge Supply. There's other things, but there was a Ridge Supply. I think it's in upstate New York. They didn't even own it, but that's the only other thing I could find that was Ridge Supply. But ridgesupply.com wasn't what was available, but it was like they wanted $500 or something.
Of course.
At the time, $500 for this for me was like, no, thank you. That was a lot of money. So I did Ridge Supply Socks. So it was ridgesupply.com. And for the first couple years, that's how I rolled. And it was fine. It didn't bother anybody. Nobody knew. Well, whoever owned ridgesupply.com started to see the traffic that I was getting at ridgesupply.socks.com, because all that nerdery that you can do on the back end of Google and stuff. Next thing you know, I started to get a little bit of money, and I was like, you know what? I can go buy ridgesupply.com now, Well, they wanted like $6,000 for it, which nobody would want this but me, And I thought, well, that's a lot of money. Well, eventually I was like, no thanks. Long story short, I think 3 years in, I actually did buy it, and the price had come back a little bit, but it's still a lot of money. But I was like, if I don't buy it now, if I wait 3 or 4 years and this thing does get bigger, they're gonna just kill me to get it.
So $50,000. Yeah.
So I went ahead and got it, and it's funny when you start out a business, though. You're asking about the name. When you start a business out, I have had a lot of friends that have either been inspired by Ridge Supply or have just reached out to me because they're trying to do something on their own and they want to know about how do I do a website, how do I get payments, how do I ship things, what should I name it? I always go back to that time and think about like how I named it. Like I had a lot of people say it was a bad name, and that's always a good sign, in my mind. Like I have some really close friends who I run everything by. And when all of them say it's a bad idea, I'm like, it's probably a good idea, And
it's not mainstream, right?
Yes. Yeah. If you can execute it, it'll work. And also too, you got to remember that the people you're talking to aren't always your demographic or the people that maybe you're trying to sell to. Like I've got one buddy, he doesn't wear pink. You know what I mean? He just won't do it, which is fine. And I know that. I bring something up to him that's really cool, that's pink. He's like, yeah, I'm not feeling it, but I'm not trying to sell it to him. So I'm cool with it.
Right. Right.
And one of the things that I've always tried to do is like take negative feedback or people's real honest reactions. And it's not like I ignore I'm not saying I ignore it but sometimes a good idea, like a good name or a good concept, is less about the first reaction and more about the execution. Because once it's executed and you look back, you sit back 5 years later and you look at something, it's like, of course, well,
right.
I mean, there may be 100,000 hours put into something to get it there, but that is also part of the beauty of how things work. I don't even know, like, I think it's funny that people look at the story of this business and that some people think it's just easy, just like, oh yeah, you just design something and in a way it kind of is, but I sure as heck didn't know what I was doing, and I'm not some gifted designer person that, had you looked back at me prior to this and been like, oh yeah, he loves color theory and biomotion, you know what I mean? Like it's defeat, Shane from Defeat. He oftentimes initially when I would come to visit him like a year or so in, and he was just flabbergasted. He's like, I don't understand why this is working. Like I didn't see this working. Why are you successful with this? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, I work hard at it for sure, but I also just have like basic principles of what it's actually kind of simple. Like it's 5 colors, it's mountains, or it's lines, and you just repeat, just keep putting on repeat. People like it. If they didn't like it, they couldn't do it again. But if you like it, and keep doing it and stay fresh. And I try to make things that I'm proud of, that I want myself. And Ridge Supply, back to the name itself was something that I knew would always represent me, kind of, and not, some people initially were like, well, you don't live in the mountains. Why would you, it isn't about it. That's not what the brand's about. The brand's about the ethos of it, and one of the negatives that I have as an influencer, or as a person who has to create Instagram content, is it is flat as a pancake around here. The roads are straight.
Right.
Our big adversary is wind, and so when I go out and take pictures, it isn't going to be of beautiful vistas and blah, 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 and drone shots. It's going to be me taking a picture of my sock, because I learned that wanting something more than that, I got a 6-hour drive to get to the mountains, so.
Right.
That's the story of it.
Well, what's next for Ridge Supply? Where do you think you're headed to, and what are your plans?
I can't give away all my secrets of where we're headed, but one of the things that but it's just me. So there's only so much one person can do. And, and I'm aware of that. I'm not at the limit of what I can do. I can certainly sell a lot more and ship a lot more socks, but the time and energy put into development and growth, or new product lines, or new opportunities. One lesson I've learned that's working is, like, even though things are good and it's successful and it's busy, I've never had a growth spurt that I couldn't hold on to the rocket ship of,
Gotcha.
So I've come up with a new product, or a new like running socks. We made a really cool running sock that didn't exist. And I was just like, you can make something that looks good when you run, but it better work when somebody's running for 8 hours in the mountains. If they're getting blisters and they're like, that's great, it looks good, but I don't want it. So once that kind of vetted itself and it's worked, it's been really good. But I'm not a runner, and I'm not out there promoting it. The people that are doing that do run and that are out there running are promoting it. And in a way, because I don't actually do the sport myself, and I am a one-man show, it will never grow like to the level that it needs to. So to answer your question, I'm going to continue to do more of what we're doing now, which is producing cool, unique stuff and making it turn over. And then also the growth of the brand is getting to the point where I would think in the next couple years, I'll probably have to add people. And I got 3 kids. My youngest is 8 months old. It's a busy time, but I'm so blessed that the business is able to stand on its own and grow. And I don't want to double in size overnight. First of all, back to that $827, I have to pay for the growth. So if I grow, I learned this from the building supply business, because prices would change, like cost would change all the time, the market of lumber and whatnot. And you could really get burned in the fact that you couldn't afford to buy the next product that you sold. So my model has always been like, okay, have a good month, take that money, reinvest in new product, get a little bit bigger. And so I've probably reached the size already of, like, meaning the number of socks that I have, that I don't need to have 300 styles. You get lost on the website. I'm already bumping that limit of, I'll notice if I put something too far down on the website that it'll never sell. And it's just because people,
yeah, they're not scrolling that far. Their attention span is this far. I mean, that's it. That's all we got.
And then, one of the, where it's headed is that I think it's still this really, I'm proud of it because I think it's a cool and unique brand that is, I don't know of another brand that is one person that doesn't advertise, that is primarily based out of Instagram, but also has an organic, local, grassroots marketing engine that is doing, it's like on autopilot,
Right.
It doesn't mean it's easy. I'm just saying, like, I get new orders all the time from places I've never been to. I don't know people there. And we've got a couple people that really support the brand organically. And then we have this ambassador program that's just awesome.
Oh, very cool.
And the ambassador program is really unique. Every year I add 72 more people to it. And so we're now over 300. And most ambassador programs are about two things: getting free product or discounted product.
Right.
Or being just belonging to something. And one thing I looked at when I was first starting it, thinking about it, is Rafa had this business model with their Rafa Collective or whatever it's called, where you paid in. So you paid in and you got access to this cool product. And I didn't dislike that model, but I always felt it wasn't a fit for what I was doing, in that you don't really want people to pay and then you profit from it, and then you're also asking them for something, to spend money.
That seems kind of weird. You pay to be in the club, right? And then you still have to pay for this,
right?
Yeah.
And so, and then the other dirty secret about ambassadorship is that if you have a marketing budget, and like, let's say you have $30,000 and you're going to put it into your ambassadorship, then that's just like a sunk cost, and you give people stuff, and it is what it is. The reality is, a lot of people want to be part of something, but they don't want to actually spend any of their own money, and
of course.
and that's not like a slight on people. It's just like, if you said, hey, you could be an ambassador for whatever, and they jump at the chance because it was free, and they get free stuff, and they're like, I'm an ambassador. Well, I knew that I needed people that would spend money with Rid Supply, because that's what I need to survive. Yeah. And then B, it had to be a mutually beneficial environment. And so what we did is that we created this sort of community, an online community, organically, and not like a manufactured way, but like where people that, I call them like privateers, there's so many people out there that race and ride and train and pay for it all themselves,
Yep.
And they're basically professional like weekend warriors, whatever.
Yes.
And, or people that are just dedicated to like getting better, being better, working out, and they're looking for inspiration. And so what we have is we have this group that isn't afraid to wear bright colors, isn't scared of neon and looking like a neon Christmas tree, because that's what the colorway is. And then they have a shared experience of connecting with people all over the world that are also, on this kind of team, in this group. And when we started it 5 years ago, it was like a concept. And it's changed and it's morphed, and now it's kind of its own entity. Jordan, who you actually know, who's a friend of the brand, has become the voice and the person behind the Instagram of Rid Supply Arsenal. And he's become a good friend and part of the inner circle, but he just started as a guy who just liked Ridge Supply and just bought stuff. And he would always repost, and he was always interested. And he was, if I put out a sale code, he'd be the first one to like reshare it, And when people do that kind of stuff, you can't help but notice it. If you have an Instagram account that is relatively popular or big, every time you look at your phone, you're only looking at a snapshot of stuff. They bury everything after 100, likes or comments. And so it's really hard to keep up. But if you tag somebody, if you tag a business, they will see it if they choose to respond or whatnot. So my thing was like a guy like Jordan came up on my radar, and he just seemed genuine. Like he just genuinely seemed to care, liked the brand, liked being part of it. And he applied to be Arsenal, and he became, Arsenal kind of earlier on, maybe 3 years ago. But when it came time for me to start an Instagram account for it, because it had really kind of outgrown what I could handle, I just asked him if he would do it. And he said sure, and he'd be honored. Well, I mean, it was amazing. I don't have to tell him anything. He just did it. And what's been neat about that is that that's kind of what Arsenal is. It isn't, there's no rules of like, hey, you need to do this, and you should post this, and you should tag this, or you should do anything. I also don't have a rule about spending money with Ridge Supply, nothing. You basically there are products. There's a separate store. I have a separate store online just for them, and they can buy things there that you can't get anywhere else. So if you want to buy it, great. If you don't, and you don't want to spend any money, with Ridge Supply, but you still want to be an ambassador, that's also an option too. I totally get the different levels of, expendable income and whatever. There are people that have one pair of Ridge Supply socks, and they are as diehard as the people who collect them.
That's awesome. How does someone become part of the Arsenal program?
Yeah, so every July, for the whole month of July, we have a place on the website where you can go and actually place an application. And
got it.
It's very simple. You basically just put your name and your email, and then there's a message spot, and you can type in there anything you want.
Nice.
What's crazy is we end up getting, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications, and we have to only pick 72. And 72 is a ton of people, but I would say one out of 10 people actually get chosen. Everyone else is getting denied, which is crazy, because anybody who applied should be able to, they'd be great ambassadors. So,
Well, I think that also kind of dilutes the whole program, though. If you have everybody that applies be a part of it. And I think if you do make it selective, there's still something special about it. And there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah. And one of the coolest things about Arsenal too is like a lot of brands, this isn't a knock on other brands, but a lot of brands, their ambassadors are people who are just good at cycling, and it starts with pros and it works its way down to, whatever. And the one thing that we did early on, which I'm very proud of, is I absolutely didn't. If somebody gave me a list of their Palmares and was like, I won this, 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 and this, I'm like, no, thank you. I'm not interested. Because if that's what you're basing your ambassadorship on, we're not going to have a good relationship. But because I didn't see pictures of people, because you can kind of tell somebody's a man or a woman, but through their name. But other than that, I wasn't doing a whole lot of there wasn't other variables. What we ended up getting was a really cool cross section of people, and you could look across Arsenal and not know like, oh yeah, well, of course that person, it's not like there was no homogenous vibe amongst the people. And we had so many people that were, and the reality is it just wouldn't be brand ambassadors if in the other scenario. And that's not cool, because what we do and what Ridge Supply sells is it's just a sock, anybody can wear them. Everybody needs socks and underwear. That's what they need, like they can't live without it. They got to have it.
Exactly.
And so everybody could be an ambassador. And the other thing too that's kind of unique is Instagram is a big part of the brand, and to take a picture, I'm guilty of this too. Like, I got a dad bod. I'm 45 years old. You know, I'm not trying to, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to take pictures of me at every angle every time and gloss it up on Instagram. But if I take a picture of my ankle and my lower leg, you know, I can pull it off because it's just a sock. And it's the same with everybody else. You know, it made it so much easier for people to share themselves on their social media without, you know, somehow being perfect, you know what I mean? And there's that sense that like you have to look a certain way or whatever. And that's also really helped kind of share it. Anybody can take their phone on their ride and take pictures. And you know, what's crazy is when we started this, only been 5 years ago, nobody did that. Nobody took pictures when they rode. Now it's like, you don't go for a ride without taking a picture. You know,
it doesn't happen if you don't put it on social media.
Yeah. If it's not on Strava and social media, you got to have a GoPro or like a drone or something, you know. But back then, it didn't happen. And I was scratching my brain, you know, when I first did it, like, how am I going to keep getting content and put it up, you know, because you got to post like 2 times a day, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now it's funny. My phone's probably got 40,000 pictures on it, you know, and not that that's enough, because it's like, if it didn't happen today, then it's not relevant, you know.
It's got to be current content, right? Yes. Yeah. Well, if someone's interested in getting a hold of some of your fantastic items, where is the best place they could find it?
Yeah, the only place you can find it really is ridgesupply.com, and we're open 24/7, 365.
Excellent.
For the last 2 years, we've shipped for free in the U.S., which is also kind of unique. If you're overseas, the shipping is based on weight, starts at $13 and goes up according to how much you buy. And the socks are available 24/7. We do have a jersey and bibs on pre-sale a lot of times, a couple times a year. And then when those do come in, we'll have a little bit of stock that we go through. We have hats, we have neck gaiters, we have water bottles, we have gloves, we have all the kind of things that are accessories, if you will, for cycling. And it's all there on ridgesupply.com. There are stockists, there are people that do carry it, but no one has the line. And those local shops are, they're available, you know, if they're in your area and they have it, great. But
if not, we can always get them online. Nice. Yeah. Excellent. Well, Matt, I appreciate your time. What a fantastic story. I'm sorry to hear the way it started, but I'm very happy to hear how it's grown from such a potentially tragic situation. But you found a solution to a problem, and I think that's how it usually starts out.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it.
So absolutely. Thank you so much for your time today, man. And enjoy the rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing you sometime soon. If you guys like what you're seeing, please make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. And as well, you can subscribe at Apple Podcasts when you can't watch the video. Have a great day. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Craig.